Hi guys, today specifically is focused on test 1 and I focused on the topics for test 1. So I just have a few tips that I want to share with you guys. So firstly, I just want to talk about strategy. Strategy is very important, guys. If you remember in our previous MEC lecture, we spoke about industries, right? So as part of industries, as part of strategy, you just need to do the research on the industries. When you do the research, specifically focus on the risks in that specific industries that they gave you, which will be part of your test and exam at year end. So also focus on your PESTEL, look at it in terms of PESTEL, SWOT, and Porter's 5 forces. This will actually help you understand the strategy of the company, where the company is going, because this in overall impacts on you understanding the whole scenario on the test date. So in terms of strategy, you should look at your product, your market, your competition, and your growth strategy. When you read the scenario, try and see in which industry is this company, in which direction this company is heading. Is it heading in the right direction? In terms of products, for example, if it's, for example, an IT company, right, and then now they want to maybe start manufacturing, I don't know, Simba chips, those two industries are unrelated, so it's impacting on the strategy. Should the company be going in that direction? Is that the right direction that they should be going? Where else, if it's an IT company, maybe they want to go into banking, then it's a good thing because they're not losing focus of the direction of the company. And then number 2 is risks. Risks are linked to your SWOT analysis, your PESTEL, and your Porter's 5 forces. So when you're doing that industry research, right, when you identify those risks, try and link them to the industry, and also try and see if they also impact on the strategy. Because, for example, you have a strategic risk, which is failure to achieve organizational goals. Is this company gonna be achieving the goals that they set for themselves? Are they moving in that direction? Because if they're not moving in the same direction in which the company's vision and mission are, then it's a problem. And then operational risk, loss of key employee is an example. And then commodity risk, price changes in prices. For example, there's changes in prices of fuel if that company is maybe a fueling industry or petroleum company, then changes in price is a risk for them. So risks are very important, guys. Just focus on your risks, and then this will help you to be able to answer any questions that they can ask you. And then number 3 that I have is the cost of capital. And then I just remembered that when I was doing CTA, there were 2 questions specifically which were really good in terms of these topics for test 1, which is Nsimbi and Meduco Group. I would encourage you guys to focus on those questions specifically and focus on understanding the principles and being able to answer the questions. If you're not able to answer the questions, then maybe there's a problem. You need to go back, look at your principles, and then you can do maybe an extra question. And then in terms of cost of capital, just know your formulas, know your CAMP, and then remember that your RF and RM minus RF is equals to your market risk premium. So meaning if they gave you the market risk premium, you don't need to subtract your risk factor. So then know your WACC formulas, which is your debt and equity. So know what forms part of your debt, which is your redeemable and non-redeemable debentures, and also know what forms part of your equity, which is your preference shares and your just your normal shares. And then what's very important here in terms of cost of capital is for you to know who the holder is. So who's the holder of that specific debt instrument or equity instrument? Because this will actually determine, especially if it's redeemable preference shares or debentures, it will determine which option the person is going to go with, the individual or the stakeholder. So in terms of redeemable preference shares and debentures, if I'm the one who's the holder of in another company, that means that if it's convertible into shares and the shares will be more when I convert, I would want to take that. But if the holder is the company, that means that the company will want to give the cheapest option to me. So you need to keep that in mind. And also, keep in mind the benefits of each of the components, like for example, your interest deductions, and the fact that your equity does not have issue costs, where else your debt does not have issue costs and your equity might have issue costs. So keep those in mind. And then number 4 is capital investment appraisals. And then just know your method, which is your payback period, your NPV, and your IRR. Your payback period, say you have an investment for 3 years, right? And you have a loan for 4 years. Those things need to be matched up. So you won't be able to pay up the loan because your investment is only for 3 years. So your loan needs to match up with your investment. So if the investment will pay up after 3 years, then your loan must also be within 3 years so that that investment is able to cover for that loan. And then your MPV, you must show your discount factor, right? And then always make sure that you carry over your work calculation discount rate into your MPV calculation. And then, yeah, so those will be extra marks. And then one thing you need to note in terms of the IRR is where the NPV is equals to 0, right? So when you do your calculation for your IRR, your NPV will be 0, and then you will just go compute on your financial calculator. And then in terms of your IRR, what it literally tells you is you will accept the investment if the IRR is more than the work. If the IRR is less than the work, then that means you won't accept that investment because you're getting a less return. And then number 5, sources of finance. So here we need to look at internal and external factors. We need to look at your gearing level of the debt. Can we take more debt? What is our current target work structure? So if you've got more debt and more equity, where else you want to have less debt and more equity, that means that you will move towards equity because you want to have more equity, right? And then the cost effective forms of finance, you also need to consider that. And when you're considering that, you need to look at your issue cost, your cash flow problems. Is there available cash in the company, or can we take up more debt? What is the interest rate that we're currently getting on the debt that we're going to acquire from a bank? And then also look at your project payback period when you want to finance, because this should be in line with your debt that you take. So if you take the debt for 5 years, that means that your project should also run for 5 years. And then look at your risk profile as well, which is what I spoke about in terms of gearing. Like, is our gearing high? Am I going to be able to take on more debt? So those are the things that you need to look at. And then just to touch base, your NPC and your IRR, when you're looking at sources of finance, so one with the lowest net present cost will be the one with the lowest cost. So that's the one you would want to take. The one with the lowest IRR, internal rate of return, is the one with the lowest cost. So that's the one you would want to take when you're looking at sources of finance. And then looking at dividend decision, just consider that when you pay high dividends or lower dividends, what's the impact on stakeholder? You need to keep that in mind. And also, just a few considerations on dividend decision is you need to look at your gearing, your profit stability, your clientele effect, which simply means that other investors might want a dividend being paid and other investors might not want a dividend being paid. The thing is, investors might want a dividend being paid because they want to see the return. And those who don't want a dividend being paid is because they want the company to keep investing that amount. So these are the considerations you need to look at when you're looking at dividend decisions. And then the other thing is the signaling effect, that when a company does not pay a dividend, it means that their share price will normally fall because it indicates that the company has cash flow problems. Why are they generally not paying a dividend? And then a constant dividend just shows that the company is successful, it's able to remunerate the investors. And then a high dividend normally means that the share price is high and the company is performing very, very well. So these are the things that you need to consider in terms of dividend decision, and also consider how they impact on stakeholders. Different stakeholders want different things in terms of dividend. Some want dividends and some don't. And then lastly, we'll be talking about working capital. Working capital is fairly easy, guys. It's your ratios. You need to look at your ratios, your cash ratio, your acid test ratios, and what these mean in terms of the ratios. Like when you calculate the ratios, what do they mean? You need to be able to explain that to the lecturer. And then also consider methods to relieve cash flows, which are maybe reducing your inventory levels and offering settlement discount, debtors factoring, and so forth. So those are the questions that you might be asked, like how do you relieve cash flow problems when a company has a cash flow problem. And then lastly, I just want to touch on the treasury function, guys. Just know that you go through your treasury functions and the different types. There's an FC contract, forward exchange contract, interest rate swaps, currency swaps, and just make sure that you understand each of those. Normally, you'll find those incorporated into your working capital. They'll say maybe that this company is buying this from overseas, and then how can they actually hedge against the difference in interest rate or the difference in currencies. So you need to make sure that you understand your treasury function.